We'd like to get started now. This is our part of our spring semester speaker series at the Patel College of Global Sustainability. Welcome, everyone. It is our pleasure to have Amy Pastor as our speaker today. Just as some background, Amy is currently Vice President of Sustainability at EXP. EXP is an engineering, architectural, and design firm and provides consulting services as well to the world's built and natural environment systems. Amy has worked on over 200 LEED certified projects, and she is currently based in Sanford, Florida, which is, I believe, right outside of Orlando. She's got a bachelor's and master's engineering degrees from Penn State University. And as part of her role as Vice President of Sustainability for EXP, Amy is a lead author for EXP's ESG report that a lot of the students here are definitely familiar with and interested in learning more about. Amy maintains the company's sustainable standards, tracks Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, and completes all third-party verification reporting through multiple platforms, including EcoVadis and the Carbon Disclosure Project. She's also a licensed mechanical engineer and specializes in sustainable design, commissioning, energy studies, energy modeling, measurement and verification, and project management. And she has a whole host of other things she can talk about also, but I'll let her lead the way. Amy, welcome, and thank you for participating in our speaker series.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Halter, for inviting me, and I'm pleased to be here. And before I share my screen,
just one more thing, Amy.
Yeah.
Just for everybody that's signed up online, if you can, and if you're feeling comfortable with it, please feel free to be live, show your video so that Amy can actually interact with you and look you in the eye, and you can ask her questions as well. If you're willing and interested in doing that, please do that. Thank you. Yes, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
No, that's fine. And thank you. I appreciate that. But before I share my screen, I do have a slide deck to present on, the topics that were shared in the interview. I do like to kind of just, knowing there's students here, share a little bit more about my journey to why I got to where I am today. And, I took the traditional route. I work for an engineering firm. I went to Penn State. I have an engineering degree and did design for about 5 years, and this is a long time ago. So I started at EXP in 2005, and during those first couple of years, the work that I did was a really tough job. I did a lot of work in the islands, in the Caribbean islands, and it was all high-end resorts where it was important to meet clients' expectation for luxury, and that was using a ton of water for rain shower heads, and everybody wants to keep their lights on all the time. But it's in the Bahamas, in Anguilla, the British West Indies, and electricity was upwards of 40 cents a kilowatt hour. We didn't have infrastructure. So we had to build plants to produce water for these massive resorts. And sustainability was not a nice to have, it was an absolute necessity. So that is really where my passion for sustainability came in. And I immediately switched over to learning more about green building certification, energy efficiency, doing some commissioning. And then as from a corporation standpoint, as we wanted to integrate sustainability more into our internal practices, our leadership felt it very important that we create a position for a corporate sustainability lead, and that is one of my many roles that I hold at EXP today. So there's different journeys and different paths that you can take, and I'm really excited to hear that we have classes dedicated to ESG reporting, because I had to learn on the fly, and a lot of us have, and a lot of us still are. So you coming out of this program may be teaching folks who have been in the industry for 20, 30, 40 years. So that was just wanted to say that before I shared my presentation, and I will start now. So let's just make sure everybody can see my screen. All right. So I did go through my introductions here. Okay. So I first want to start with just talking a little bit more about EXP. With it, we have a mission to understand, innovate, partner, and deliver engineering, architecture, design, and consulting services to the world's built and natural environment. We have been in service for 117 years with our heritage company opening in the early 1900s. And we are regularly on the top 25, 26 list for ENR, BD&C giants and consulting specifying engineers, which are traditional. These are rankings that our industry uses and publishes every year. But one thing we really hold true is our vision and values, and we deliver exponential possibilities for our clients, our employees, and our communities. And we do that with integrity, passion, accountability, transparency, diversity, and most importantly, community and sustainability. We're talking about a class with ESG, and that S, that social aspect and the diversity, equity, and inclusion is a very, very, very important part of EXP's values. And we understand the importance of increased participation from minority, women, disabled, veteran, and LGBT-owned businesses. A lot of public sector projects that we chase have small business goals. We always exceed them, and we often take our small business partners with us to our private sector clients who don't often have those goals or requirements, but we find that it is very important to not only exceed those goals, but to have diversity in our suppliers and vendors that we use, and also within our own operations. So these are just a few stats about sustainability at EXP. We have worked on over 400 LEED certified projects as an organization, which covers about 78 million square feet. We have and continue to be commitments to and signatories of the AIA, MEP, and SE challenges. And those three together are trying to get us to carbon neutrality in our embodied and operational carbon within our buildings and our structures by 2050. So AIA is leading the way. MEP joined in recently, and so did our structural engineers. And a couple other things, UN Global Compact, you'll hear me talking about that a little bit more, because that is where the SDGs, those Sustainable Development Goals, and which many ESG reports align with those SDGs. So we are signatories, and we do a communication of progress every year to showcase that we continue to uphold our values and our vision and our goals to align with UNGC. So here's just a little map of where we are. We are about 4,000 professionals. We are privately held, which is going to be an important aspect coming later when I start talking about publicly versus privately held companies. We are closer to 100 offices, but you'll see that our largest sectors are in Quebec and Ontario, and then we have several offices, 9 offices in Florida, and we do have a few offices in California, and the rest are scattered throughout North America. So who we are multidisciplinary experts. We focus on projects big and small, and we do like to target 6 key markets, which are buildings, infrastructure, earth and environment, program and project delivery with operations as a subset of that, industrial and chemical, and of course, we believe it's so heavily in our sustainability, resilience, and regenerative design market that it is a standalone unit. And then here's some key services. So buildings, when you think buildings, it's traditional MEP, structural. Going to industrial and chemical, we start to do, process and automation controls. Earth and environment, civil, geotechnical, infrastructure, land development, and project and program delivery. We do large scale projects and we deliver on them. And then sustainability, resiliency, and regenerative, it's everything. That really does overlap all of the services that we provide. So I know that this class is focused for students who are studying ESG and sustainability planning. So I'm not going to dive too deeply into what ESG is and those sustainable development goals. However, knowing this was extended to a larger audience, I do think that it's valuable to give a little bit of background, that 10,000 foot flyover on, the why and the what for ESG. Then I'll talk about EXP and how we use those sustainable development goals in our corporate sustainability initiatives. And then, one key thing in students that I listen to how you can come into sustainability careers, because you working for an organization like an AE can help clients meet their goals if you are sitting at that table saying, what are your goals and how can we help them on your projects? And that's kind of my path. That's how I took a path and how I became, an ESG expert. And, in all of this, hopefully the goal is to teach you and to tell you about what you can look forward to in your future. So ESG, very clear, environmental, social, and governance. E is exactly as it sounds. It's that water and energy efficiency. It's climate change strategies. It's looking at monitoring what you're doing. So an environmental and energy management plan. Social, this is where we start talking about equal opportunities, human rights, and what you're doing for the community. So on our report, we report on a lot of the volunteer work that we do within our organization and externally. And then governance, it's compliance. It's what we're doing on our board. It's our executive compensation. It's our shareholder democracy and our diversity within our organization and our business ethics. So sustainable development goals. And, one of the toughest jobs I have is people ask me to define sustainability, and it's so broad and everybody thinks something so differently. And this graphic really does show that because the sustainable development goals cover everything from no poverty all the way to life below water and life on land. And it is the sustainable development goals align so closely with ESG that there's even this wonderful graphic to help clear up any people who are just starting out. What is environmental, what is social, what is governance? And you could see that they've clearly stated 8, 11, and 8. But you're thinking 8, 11, 8, that's more than 17. Well, here's my clearly unclear way. I'm a huge football fan, so I said this is not a poorly drawn pass play. It's just showing that there's so many intersections and that the SDGs are not just standalone. One's environment, one's social, one's governance. Something like climate action has an E and a G. So it's environmental, but you're going to need policies behind it as a component to make sure that that gets put into place and that it's actually enacted. And something like industry, innovation, and infrastructure, well, it's all three. When you start to talk about infrastructure, and that social component and connecting communities, well, you need to bring in all three aspects of it. So as an ESG professional, not only internal to my organization, but to my clients, I say, what are your goals and targets? What are your goals and your targets for your projects? What are your goals and targets for your organization? Because then that helps me decide how I can help a client or how I can help our organization. And the reality is there is a climate crisis. We need to reduce the energy consumption and demand that we're using in our operations and our buildings. And inherently, there's a cost savings. So when you reduce energy, you're going to reduce utility costs. And one other way too is we have a lot of clients that are retrofitting buildings, and they don't know that if they just right size, if they reduce and maybe put LED lights in, you can find added capacity for your equipment. And when you go to expand or repurpose a facility, maybe you're not buying new equipment to service it. You're reusing existing equipment, which means you're saving money. You're not you're not going beyond your means. You're not over designing a system, and you're again having cost savings, and you're creating more resilient systems because now you might have built-in backup when you start to talk from an engineering perspective. And then for us, when I look at this, I say, we align with several SDGs for our clients' projects. And I like to then present to them, I say, these are the 5 SDGs that we think we can help you with. And we can help you reporting as we're going through your projects, as we're delivering efficient designs, because you maintain and operate buildings. You build new buildings that are going to use energy, water, waste, and carbon. Um, are you planning for real estate for future renewable energy systems on a rooftop or in open spaces? Are you going to have EV charging? We hear about the problem with not having enough infrastructure to charge electric vehicles and the demand that we see in the future. Well, are you planning for that? And then are you building something that's going to connect communities and provide multimodal transportation? So we like to talk about that to our clients too as potential drivers for sustainability, and then how we can trickle that down to their projects and help them in their final report. Um, so I mentioned about EXP being a privately held company, and we talked just about drivers that are getting people to write their ESG reports and look at corporate sustainability. Well, the SEC it's currently proposed, and it's been proposed for a while. It went to public comment, came out of a public comment, went back, and it's back and forth. But essentially, the bottom line is, if this ruling goes through, it's going to require that any publicly traded company report on their greenhouse gas emissions and report on any climate-related financial metrics that would be required and that would be required for an audited financial statement. So essentially, any publicly traded company is going to have to report on their Scope 1, their Scope 2, and their Scope 3 emissions. So their site, their source, and their supply chain. And guess what? That is a big driver for why we, as a privately held company, this isn't going to affect us, but it's going to affect a lot of our clients. So we have to be prepared to be able to provide our clients with a report that they can prove that their supply chain, which is us as consultants, are doing the right thing, that we are being good stewards of the environment, that we are internally practicing and reducing our impacts on, our carbon footprint and our impacts on the environment. So I always like to bring that up because um, especially students who are looking at potential futures and careers, if there are organizations who don't have these experts within their industry, they're going to be looking to fill the gap and find people who can help them with their ESG reports, with their corporate sustainability initiatives, and set them up for success if this ruling goes through. So I talked about the 7 SDGs. These are, and I'm happy to share these slides. These are really just facts and figures. And this is things that I share with my clients. And I say, SDG 7, if you're looking at that, energy is the dominant contributor to climate change, and it accounts for about 60% of the total greenhouse gas emissions. And I said, if words aren't enough, this is on the sdgs.un.org, their site. They have infographics for every single SDG, and it's great because as we get to the next slide, you'll see each SDG has a target, and then we might not align with all the targets, so that infographic is a really great way to say, here's the high level, what everything is being covered here, and then we can dive, and I as an expert can help our clients say, well, what are you looking to align with? What can you align with? And I'll say, well, we can help you by 2030. Guess what? That's not that far away. That's only 7 years from now. We have to double the global rate of improvement in energy efficiency. And that's going to mean those deep energy retrofits. It's going to mean looking at our own internal operations and saying, what are we doing internally to reduce our impact on the grid, on the utility. So 9, we have a large infrastructure practice, so we see ourselves aligning with this for clients and then also internally. Um, we going to go right to the infographic because I think this is a better idea. It's 1 in 3 manufacturing jobs are negatively impacted by the crisis. So the crisis they're talking about is pandemic, and we're also starting to see a lot of industries struggling to recuperate from losses that happened during the pandemic. And again, we talked about infrastructure, the upgrades that are required for our continued, we're in this climate crisis, but we are continuing to increase our demand on our utilities. And by 2030, we need to upgrade our infrastructure and retrofit industries to make them sustainable and increased resource use efficiency and greater adoption of clean and environmentally sound technologies in industrial processes. So industrial processes are very harmful to the environment. And if we don't find ways to make them more sustainable, we're going to erase a lot of the good that we've been doing over the last couple of years. So then let's jump to 11. Half of humanity live in cities today, and 5 billion people are projected to live in cities by 2030. So it's it's no surprise that cities account for between 60 and 80% of energy consumption and generate as much as 70% of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. So it's our job as consultants to make cities more sustainable, make communities more sustainable, and make them more walkable. 90% of the world's urban pollution breeds polluted air. That's a terrible metric. So we need to be able to target this. So we in our organization target this and make sure that our projects are contributing towards more sustainable cities and communities and supporting positive economic, social, environmental links between urban, per-urban, and rural areas by strengthening national and regional development planning. So this is that sustainable planning practice that you're looking at. And again, those walkable cities, the connected communities are very critical, and making sure that not only is that transportation sustainable, but that it is accessible and that it is safe and it's affordable. So then the next one is 12. This one, I think everybody, including you in your personal life, should be targeting. So write your own personal ESG report. And if it only has number 12 on it, that's fine, because this is ensuring sustainable consumption and production. Well, we have to be responsible consumers and producers. And, this excessive use of water contributes to the global water stress. So I like to sit here and say, I've retrofitted my house with all low flow, or we call them high efficiency fixtures. And a global switch to energy efficiency light bulbs is going to save $120 billion annually. That's incredible. And that money, think about that money can be put into other more sustainable practices if our industries start to do that. And food waste is a major problem. And I like to show this graphic, and just up at the top, unsustainable patterns of consumption and production are the root cause of triple planetary crisis, which is climate change, biodiversity loss, and then pollution. So we have to find ways to internal to our organization and also in our projects, encourage companies to adopt sustainable practices and integrate sustainability information into their reporting cycles. So make sure that they're reporting on what they're doing sustainably. And then monitor sustainable development impacts. So this is, again, it's that critical element of reporting on what organizations are doing in their practices, so that we can be transparent with how we are making a better future. And climate action. This is one that it goes across the board. CO2 emissions have increased by almost 50% since 1990, and we're focused on reducing climate change impacts. Yet we still in 2021 saw a 6% increase, reaching the highest levels ever. So here's our warning. We've been being warned. I'm not going to get on that soapbox, because I know I have a lot of people who are very into making sure that we're going to not have this happen. But we have to strengthen resilience and adaptive capabilities to climate-related hazards and natural disasters in all countries. So how are we, I said I'm going to talk about our client goals, but I think it's really important to talk about the fact that, we've done a materiality assessment. We've looked at what are our climate risks, what is important to us in our industry, internally, and then how we're going to take that to our clients and make sure that they're being good stewards. So then I'll showcase some of our really cool projects and talk about how we've reported on them, because that's how we took our approach. Our first environmental social governance report was issued last year. And we focused on our people and our projects. So, what our people are doing for our communities and what our projects are doing to benefit the environment. In the intro, I do report to third-party platforms, which includes documenting our carbon intensity and our energy use and water use, and then also our scope 3 emissions. So, our scope 3 as a consultant is our travel, our printing costs, our sustainable procurement policies, and then I'm also part of my job is education. So putting together marketing materials internal to our organization that's also going to help educate all of our professionals on what we're doing so that they can contribute and help us meet our sustainable development goals. So ESG reporting for us, it was two drivers. One was it was important to us, and the second was we saw a demand and mandate from clients to report to these platforms to create an ESG report. And we're even seeing now that many of the projects that we're pursuing are requiring that the company have an ESG report. So it's a pass-fail criteria. As an architect, as an engineer, do you in your company have third-party verified reporting? Are you talking about sustainability in your organization? If you don't have a report that aligns with the GRI reporting standard, then you cannot bid on this project. So that's how important and how critical your role as students coming out, and how vital it will be when you're finding these jobs, to make sure that these reports are in place, because there are companies who are now precluded from even chasing some of these projects. So I talked a little bit about climate risk assessments. There's really two that I look at. It's the acute physical risks, and that's extreme weather events. And how does that impact our organization? Well, we have a large amount of people in Canada, and if there's snow, wind, ice, they may not be able to travel into the office. So our business plan our model, accounts for the fact that we might have people working remotely, and we need to give them the access to work remotely, because if they can't work that day, does that mean they can put food on the table? So it's this whole chain, and we make sure that we're looking at all of our climate risks. And then, for us, transition risk, we have identified transition risk as the largest impact on our business. So as an AE, we're designing buildings, we're designing infrastructure, and if we move away from fossil fuels, our designers have to find ways to build buildings that are all electric or that are using renewable energy. And that's part of our environmental goals and targets. So we're educating and making sure that our professionals can deliver on that to clients. Um, so, as an ESG professional, you may be asked to benchmark a company's carbon footprint, and that's exactly what I did. So, we have offices that throughout the U.S., throughout Canada, and we are reporting on our Scope 1 and 2 emissions. So, Scope 1, we have some offices that have fossil fuels on site, so it's usually a gas water heater, and then our Scope 2, which is going to be that source. So it's all the electricity that comes to our buildings, and we do this. This is just the a snapshot of our U.S. offices, and then our company has committed to a 5% year-over-year reduction in our energy use, and then our associated greenhouse gas emissions. And we've met that target over the last 4 years. So we started benchmarking in fiscal year 2019. We're currently, our fiscal year runs April 1 through March 31st. So we're in fiscal year 2023. And right now we're targeting and anticipating that we also meet that goal again this year. So for Scope 3, we only look at 3 right now, which are printing. So we track our printing costs. We track our and we track our travel, and we track our sustainable. We have a sustainable purchasing policy. So for our travel, everybody knows. So we talk about fiscal year. So fiscal year 19 is our fiscal year 2020 is our base year, which ended on March 31st. 2020, and fiscal year 2021 was basically the first year of the pandemic. So we did great. Our reduction of our base year was almost 80% in travel. But we said, that is an atypical year. We are a business. We need to travel to our projects, and we need to travel to meet each other in person. So we've set a goal of 50% below the base year. Well, fiscal year 2022 came, and everybody wanted to travel. So, we didn't quite hit that goal. And this year we are just slightly under. I am expecting we'll get to be 45% below our base year. But you know what? That's okay. Just because we didn't meet our goal, it didn't mean we failed. It just means that we have room for improvement. And maybe our target was we were a little too ambitious. So that's something that I, as a professional, need to look back and assess and look at industry standard and see, well, how are we comparing to other equivalent companies? And, maybe we are doing really well, and our 50% goal was just a little too ambitious for us today, but I see us getting there. And then finally, I showcased the SDGs that we committed to last year. I'm adding 2 this year. So we'll also be looking at 7, which is affordable clean energy, and 11, which is that sustainable communities and cities. But we contributed to 7 SDGs last year in our first year. And to me, the most important one was quality education. And I give monthly webinars internally, and it's talking about sustainable projects, sustainable people, sustainable initiatives, and then making sure that all of our professionals can deliver to our clients what they need, help them contribute to their sustainable development goals. All right. So I'm a little bit of a nerd when it comes to our projects. I am very passionate about what we do and how we have helped clients achieve their ESG goals and targets. And I'm really excited to showcase some of our most exceptional projects in a few ways that we have continued to support our clients' corporate sustainability goals. So you may be asking, why am I showing you a cultural center? Well, we're talking about the SDGs, and there's all those targets and those, subsets. Well, Sustainable cities and communities, there's a target to strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. And that's exactly what we did here. So, the Choctaw Cultural Center, we had the opportunity to work with the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. And this not only is a museum that showcases their entire history, the entire history of their tribe, but it's also where they house. So, in the basement of this building, there is literally a bunker with all of the artifacts, all the documents, anything that has ever been part of the Choctaw tribe. Their history sits below this museum. And we were challenged with protecting that because you're in Oklahoma, there are tornadoes. So, the bunker, so not only did the bunker have to protect and house and store all those relics, those artifacts, those documents, it had to withstand an F5 tornado. And for those, if there's anybody engineering here, documents need to be stored at a certain temperature and a certain humidity. And if you lose power, what happens? Your air conditioning goes down. So we had to make sure it was resilient so that it can come back up in the event that a tornado came through and wiped out, the main power source to this building. So we had a backup power. So this is one of the stories that we celebrated in our ESG report because it strengthened the efforts to make sure we were going to protect, it's one nation, but their nation's culture and heritage. So something a little flashier and something a little bit more traditional when you think of, buildings with energy efficiency. This is the Carrier headquarters building. It's in Palm Beach Gardens. It is a LEED platinum, well platinum, very close to net zero energy. So it's not quite off the grid, but it's as close to low energy use as you can get. And it is not only an office building for their employees, but it is also a showroom floor. So visitors can come. They are excited about this building. If you ever want to do a tour, please call me because they would love to showcase the sustainable efforts that they have done and the sustainable technologies that they're using, not only in their buildings, but so they can sell them to you. But that's fine. So if you can see in the bottom center of the screen, that is where they have a dynamic dashboard and they're showcasing literally to the minute, to the 15-minute intervals, it's actually how they're using energy in that building. So this is really showcasing all of the technologies. They're using their technologies to deliver on, their corporate goals, which is to be as close to climate neutral as they can. And it's not always about energy efficiency. Although this building is designed very efficiently, Tavistock Development Company developed the Lake Nona Wave Hotel. This is outside of Orlando, and they have a firm commitment to equity and wellness. So we start to look at the social aspect of the ESG, and they have partnered with renowned leaders in the DEI space, and features have been curated specific to this hotel for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. There's a children's library with DEIA focused books. Their menus are featured, their menus have been curated and are creations by chefs of color. Their bar has over 200 beverage brands that support female, Black, and LGBT owned businesses. And in 2020, they were recognized by Orlando Business Journal as with the Diversity in Business Award for Outstanding Organization. They also look at wellness. So, wellness is another component in connected communities. They sit in Lake Nona, which has autonomous vehicles. So, they have zero emission shuttles that can transport you around the site. And then, if you'd like to go do aerial acrobatic yoga down at Deepak Chopra's gym down the road there, you can also get to that. You can walk there or you can take a zero emission vehicle to the site. We have this internal argument all the time. We say, well, you can build a brand new sustainable building that's, zero emissions and everything, but what's more sustainable than taking something that's existing and creating something that is now an experience? And this is our historic Union Station, and it's now the St. Louis Aquarium. And the unique challenge that we face here was taking an existing building and trying to reuse and readapt as much as possible. So going in, seeing does the electrical infrastructure work for what we need? You have a 1.3 million gallon tank in an aquarium, but LED lighting and using high efficiency systems, we were able to transform this space into an aquarium, an event space, a retail store, and it really helped meet their goals for, reuse, rehabilitation, and then modernization and connecting the communities. For those of you who may be following a lot of the federal grants and funds that are available, the federal government is doing a lot of deep energy retrofits, and they are also looking at historic preservation and showcasing. We talk about that culture. This building is in Indianapolis, and the next picture shows it a little bit more. As part of their culture, the artwork needed to be maintained. And how are we going to do that and still, transform this building and modernize it, reduce the impact on the environment, and also meet the goals of federal government to continue to reduce their impact on the natural world. So these are just a few images of the interior space. We've made it so much, it's more accessible, it's cleaner, it's using a lot of the existing materials, so we're not using resources. We're being responsible consumers and producers of for SDG 12. And this is another project that we celebrated. And then, of course, there's the big PV panels. So contributing to renewable and clean energy. And this is a LEED Platinum building in Bangor, Maine, where it was a courthouse and federal building that was repurposed, revitalized, reused. So very low energy use, very low material use, and it continued to meet the goals set by corporately for the federal government. Now, I can't name this client. There's actually a few clients that I had to pull out of this presentation because we can't disclose the work that we do. But this is a confidential client that sits on the east coast of Florida. They have a carbon neutrality goal for 2030, and they're doing that through on-site renewables on their buildings. They have many LEED Platinum and net zero energy buildings, and they do have a large PV array that's 2 megawatts. It's pretty impressive to see. I'm not sure that you can access this site. You need to have clearance to get on this site, but it's pretty impressive. So I was able to at least showcase this picture, which is just one building that's LEED Platinum and net zero energy, because all of the energy is offset through the renewables that are on top of the roof. I always like to showcase my passion for working in higher education. Hopefully that comes through in how I'm in talking, but I do a lot of work with the University of Central Florida, who has a climate neutral goal of 2040. And this is helping them meet their corporate sustainability goals or their university goals. We've been working with them for over 20 years. There's 30 LEED certified projects on campus, and it's not only their new designs that are trying to meet all of these, the energy efficiency goals, but also their existing buildings. And they've actually created this strategic plan where instant impact. So changing out a light bulb, we talked about that light bulb. Changing out every light bulb saves $120 billion. Well, doing that on a smaller scale has allowed UCF to save, looking at this chart, $10,000 a year, which then can go to create, one of the future savings, one of their roadmaps, to do complete LED lighting retrofits across campus, which might cost $88,000. So those small impacts, that savings from a year, are now supporting, their future goals, and it's working. So they have continued to grow their campus, and you can see that EUI, or that the energy use per square foot, continues to come down as the campus goes up in size. I can't do a presentation without showcasing the Marina Bay Sands. They're a very good client of ours, and the Marina Bay Sands and Las Vegas Sands Corporation is very committed to sustainability, and our efforts include LEED certification on the Lotus Flower is an art science museum. The podium that everything sits on is a convention center, and through energy audits and retro commissioning, we've done solar feasibility studies and created a sustainable impact statement for them, which they use. So any convention that comes in, they can track all of the efforts, all the material, all the waste, all the food, all the energy, all the transportation, from an event that happens at this site. They're able to track that and then use that for their corporate reporting each year when they're reporting on their scope 3 emissions, because those conventions contribute to their emissions and their ESG report. So as you can see the theme, I'm going up in size. This is a couple transportation projects where we have worked on, creating and connecting communities. So this is the largest infrastructure improvement project to date, and it reconnects the South Side communities to opportunities throughout Chicago. So you can see the Chicago skyline in the distance. This sits over 10 lanes of highway, but it provides multimodal transportation for all of the communities. So somebody can walk from their home there, get on the train and head into the city without using a single passenger vehicle and worrying about parking and worrying about emissions. And similarly, we've done a lot of work with the CTA, and revitalizing and renewing and connecting that community to lead them to, feel safer in these spaces and continue to use sustainable transportation, using public transportation, and it not being a hurdle. It's not like you're worried about waiting for the bus and it not showing up or feeling safe at night. These areas have really been transformed to create more opportunities, more accessible nature for public transportation. And as we go to airports, we still travel is important. We still need airplanes, but how can we create spaces that align with an airport's sustainable development plan, create energy efficiency, and then also, take something that looks like this to something beautiful, and also, brings in their cultural aspect. So St. Louis Lambert International Airport, their entryway, imagine walking into the airport and seeing artists, local artists, and seeing these spaces that used to look like this are now look like this, and you can sit and have just this experience, and that's what we're trying to bring. And also in helping with their goals, look at, there's natural lighting, so there's less energy from using LED light. Even if it's LED lights, there's still less lighting being used and less energy being used in that space. And these are just a few more just beautiful images on how we've created this beautiful experience, for the airport. And a lot of our work on airports, we have created a roadmap to net zero. And it's not just the air side and the land side in those terminals, but it's all the operations that go with an airport. And even looking at opportunities for low GHG fuels. So sustainable aviation fuel is a very hot topic, and looking at ways that we can reduce our impacts on travel. And that is part of many of the, FAAs, but also a lot of these individual airports. Their goals, are to try to be as low carbon as possible. And these are just some ways that we are helping our clients achieve those goals. So this is just, we were chatting before the conversation about a lot of the work that we do, in the cities, in Canada, and this is the city of Montreal, where we created and helped them get LEED ND certified, which is neighborhood development, and created 1,200 meters of new raised bike lanes. So again, contributing and reducing the impacts for greenhouse gas emissions. It contributed to the city of Montreal sustainable development goals and their corporate sustainability initiatives, and helped create, this beautiful walkable city, and reduces the impacts on the environment. And similarly, this is the 35th Street pedestrian bridge, which you can see again starts to look at sustainable cities and connect the community. We've also offered true ESG services to our clients. So this is the Bahia Beach project in Puerto Rico, and a client came to us and says, we don't know how to write a report. We know we want to be climate neutral. We need to understand our scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. Can you do the benchmarking for us? And that's what we did. We looked at their whole site, saw what their operations were, and then made recommendations for how to get them to carbon neutral in the future. And we've done the same for whole islands. So this is a project, this is Hopetown United, which was one of the Abaco Islands that was completely destroyed during Hurricane Dorian. We were working on a project, Hurricane Dorian came through, and those owners said, we need to make sure that this island can be resilient, because it's not if, it's when that next catastrophic event comes through, we can't have our communities be offline with no power, no water for weeks, months. I mean, even years, some of those places were not up and running. Um, so then at the biggest scale possible, it's providing renewable power generation. And whether it's large scale solar or hydropower, our projects continue to deliver and contribute to that, SDG 7 for renewable energy sources to buildings and to the grid. So finally, I would just like to showcase, and thank you for your time. I like to say it takes an army, to do this. So no matter what you're doing in the ESG world, celebrate your successes with everyone, your clients, your partners, your projects. And I thank you for your time, and I'm excited to be here and open for questions. I hope I have time for questions. Right on the nose.
We do have time for questions. Amy, thank you very much. Very impressive presentation. It sounds like you've done a lot of really good work on ESG related stuff. I had a couple of really short questions, and then I know there's a couple in the chat, and then we can open it up to others too. The question I have is, so EXP you mentioned is a really big A&E firm, architecture and engineering firm that goes in and does and does you have you have engineering work too.
Mhm.
How big is your sustainability group, and what does it report through? I mean, which part of the division of the company does it report to when you talk about your ESG reporting?
Yes. So ESG reporting falls under corporate sustainability, which is my team. So right now I'm actually building my team. So I'm loving that I'm talking to a bunch of students. I started as a team of one about a year and a half ago, and it has just taken off. So our ESG team is now a team of two, but I have, it does take a team. So I rely on a lot of resources. We have sustainability teams that work on projects in all of our sectors. So there's probably about 100 sustainable professionals throughout the organization in our buildings group and our infrastructure group. And I collaborate with and partner with them as I'm developing this report. I work with our facilities team because they're handling our utility bills and all that data. I work with our operations team because they're handling a lot of the procurement for our sustainable policies. And then I work with our marketing and our communications team because they're the ones who celebrate our projects and help me fit which projects, fit the mold for each of our SDGs.
The sustainability group, the one that you run, reports to.
I report directly to our owner. So my
Oh,
boss
good,
is the owner of the company.
good.
Yeah. So
That's
they, Mark and Ivan Dvorak are the owners of our company, and they have such a belief in sustainability that we have. I am corporate sustainability. I report directly to our ownership.
all right. Let me read out a couple of questions
Yeah.
from the chat. The first one is from Sydney, and Sydney is an old student. She just reminded me. What has been, and she actually works for an A&E firm too.
Great.
What has been your experience with the AIA 2030 challenge? Do you have any challenges with collecting MEP data from engineers? We've developed our sustainability action plan, but it is difficult for me to hunt down the engineers to get the baseline energy data we need to model our buildings in the Cove tool. So this is a common question. Our students work with some local businesses as well. Some of them fairly large, with offices in 200 different locations around the world. And the problem is collecting data. That is a huge. So what do you do to do that? Is the point?
It's funny you said that, Sydney, because I have a meeting calendared on Friday to meet with my architects because reporting season is upon us. So it- it's a little bit of there's two parts to that question. So our architects, traditionally our MEP engineers are working with our architects. So it's still there's challenges, but getting the data from the MEP engineers is fairly easy because I can walk over to their cube or I can call them on the phone because they're internal to organization. But we also have a sector of MEP engineers that work with other architects. So a lot of our clients, we don't just do everything together. We piecemeal out. So we have architect clients who are often calling us and asking us for that information. And we have tried to streamline that process. But, again, if you're working on 300 projects a year, you don't know who's asking for what. Ideally, we're reporting on everything, but I know that's not always the case. So it is a challenge. We as MEP engineers try to be better about it, but I've grabbed that, and last year it was a struggle, and this year I'm hoping it's less of a struggle.
I think the key, Amy, is, I mean, so you do that the first time, you contact the engineers, you collect the data, but you got to do that every single year.
Yes,
You got to automate that process. That's
yes,
the challenge. How do you
and
automate that process?
exactly. And we've tried spreadsheets and we said, hey, send it out. And Sydney, as you know, it's different design milestones. So it's, did they do an energy model during schematics? What is the number? Did they update it at construction documents? And it's data mining. And it could potentially be a challenge. It usually is. So
Another question from Keshe Barrett is, what is your company's focus on sustainability? I think Amy talked a little bit about that. Hopefully, maybe you can remind Keshe again about what you do. The other part of it is, what is the sole operations of EXP? What is EXP training to accomplish its 2030 goals?
Right. So we have, so yeah, our focus on sustainability, we deliver sustainability as a service, whether it's green building certification, sustainable infrastructure, or, helping clients write and achieve their ESG goals. As far as our 2030 goals, we've set targets, internal to our organization. We have not put the number 2030 on it. Most of our targets are we want to be 50% below a baseline year every year, and then we've committed to reevaluating periodically, probably every 3 to 5 years. And the one big one is the 5 year. 5% reduction year over year in our energy use, with the hope that that gets us as close to carbon neutrality by it's probably more of a 2040 goal, because we continue to expand offices, we continue to reduce offices, and that number fluctuates a little bit. So by 2030, we want to make sure that we're working on projects that are net zero energy or regenerative design. That would be an ideal goal of mine. And then we want to make sure that all of our clients who have committed to 2030 goals, that we have helped contribute in every way, shape, and form with our services to making sure that they meet them. So that's really what I would like to see happen by 2030.
Any other questions from the group? Maybe you can raise your hand or put it in the chat. While we're waiting, I do have more questions, but I'll wait for others to answer. But while others are thinking about their questions, I can ask another one. What is your take on? ESG is very important, as we all know, for all the folks that are in the sustainability field, and so is DEI, like you mentioned, very important topics. What do you think are the implications of some of the political pushbacks on things like ESG and even DEI? You think ESG and DEI are here to stay long term, in spite of some of these political kind of pushbacks? What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, I think I think the passionate folks on sustainability and DEI are here to stay, and I don't think that's going to change. So even with the political changes, if the SEC ruling doesn't go through, I still think we are on a trajectory that we're not going to stop. I see, I'm committed to a more equitable, diverse, inclusive, and accessible future. And to me, I know I'm in great company, and I don't see us losing that trajectory.
Any other questions, comments?
Amy, all of your infrastructures are gorgeous.
Thank you.
I particularly liked the one in Singapore.
Yes.
I know that you mentioned a sustainable impact statement. I think that's what you said.
Yes.
What does that look like when you build it?
So we are engineers by nature, so it started as an Excel spreadsheet with lots of formulas. And then it went into the hands of graphics and people who can make it, marketing folks who can make it more graphical, and it so the formulas were able to help the calculations in the background, and then web designers and marketing folks helped strategize a way to make that more user friendly. So it became pull down menus, it became, entry forms like how did you get to Singapore, airplane, where did you fly from? And then there are calculations in the background that start to spit out that information. And then from their internal operations, it's a little bit different because the food side, the convention center uses their internal folks for food, and they're able to track how much is ordered and then how much is wasted, because they have a biodigester and an aerobic digester on site. So they're able to they compact and trash and or take all the food waste, and are able to measure it and weigh it as it goes to their end result. So yeah, to the end user, it looks like just a questionnaire, but in the background, it started as this massive spreadsheet that all of us engineers nerded out on.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Is there an email that that some of us can reach out to you? Is a question also in the chat. Maybe if you can put it on the chat for folks to. I mean, if you're okay with it, Amy. I'm not trying to make your email, available to everybody. But if you'd like, oh, there you go. You already
There
did
it
it.
is.
Okay.
I did it for you. Yeah. And I'm also, I'm try to be as active on LinkedIn as possible. And so please feel free if there's additional questions. Email is great. So is LinkedIn. That's about as social media as I get. I've tried the other ones, but I'm just, I'm a generation too early.
Any other question? That's great. Well, Amy, sounds like you've answered a lot of questions. Very useful and important discussion for our students. We'd like to keep you engaged with our school here, the College of Sustainability. And as you noted yourself, I mean, we are graduating a lot of sustainability related students, and they could benefit from your experience. And I'm sure you might be looking to hire some of them in the future. Maybe there's some internship opportunities for the students as well. So let's keep in touch. Would like to keep you engaged and bring you in also for some of the conferences that we do, down the road. And maybe work on some projects with you as well with the students. I mean, we can talk about that offline and see how we could engage with you with some of those things too. So thank you very much again, Amy. We appreciate you taking the time to spend with us, and we wish you all the best, and we look forward to collaborating with you in the future.
I thank you so much. And Miss Shirley, did you have a question?
Yes, yes.
Oh,
First of all, I'd like to
I didn't see
thank
that.
you
Sorry.
for the all the great information you shared. You did mention you could or you would share the PowerPoint, your presentation with us. I think it would be very beneficial to students and for faculty and staff as well. But you mentioned supplier diversity. As the financial manager for the Patel College, each month I submit to our DIEO officer uh, our supplier diversity activity, and we only have one. How do you recruit or engage more diversified suppliers to come on board with uh, being our sustainable vendors?
That's an excellent question. And I will tell you, so primarily our experience is partnering with consultants to provide our consulting services to clients. And it's relationship building. I'm very active in the Central Florida community and in other communities too. So I partner with and I make sure I have friends who are small businesses, women-owned business, minority-owned business, disabled veteran, and we continue to use them on projects, and that helps with us meeting, and we always exceed our diversity goals, especially for public sector clients who are requiring it. But even for those who aren't, that's our best partners. I mean, that is how we are fostering relationships. That is how we are helping contribute to economic development and growth, and giving opportunities to those who may not have otherwise had it. So we just solicit, we partner, we go to small business. They have a lot of conferences where you can go and meet and engage small businesses, and we often cold call. I've made a lot of great friends by just looking up registered small businesses in the area who are aligned with our values, and meeting them for coffee and just chatting through and giving each other a shot to work on a project together.
Great, thank you. And I
Yeah.
will be using your email just to ask you some questions or ask for more information if needed. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
I missed your hand up there, Shirley. Sorry about that.
I'm
Thank you.
trying
Thank
to
you.
put it down.
Thank you for asking that question. Yes, important question. All right. Well, thank you again, Amy. We appreciate it, and we will certainly look forward to collaborating with you in the future. Thank you.
Great.
And thank you, everybody else, for attending. Hope it was valuable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.